From the Clock Tower, this is the C.S. Lewis Book Club. I'm Dan.
And I'm Alex. Welcome to our book club. We're on a walking tour through Middle-earth. We've been pursuing this trail night and day until we come back at the turn of the tide.
In this episode, we'll be talking about our experience in Book 3 of The Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers. We're not reviewing the book, but we still might spoil if you haven't read it yet. So if you don't want that, pause here, go read, and we'll be waiting for you when you get back.
All right. I don't have anything else to say.
Well, that's a little early. All right. No housekeeping then? Doesn't seem like.
Yeah, I don't have any. Is there anything you've been pondering about that was, I guess?
Not in housekeeping, but I have plenty. I'll tell you later. So.
Okay.
All right. Can I read the summary?
Yeah, I'm thinking that maybe there's something that we should say before we jump in. See, we're recording this after having recorded other things that haven't been released yet.
It's always a problem.
So it's difficult to think, what have we already said? And do I need to disclaim something like I always do? How are you doing? How are you doing in Lord of the Rings?
I think I'm good. I think I'm just enjoying the story at this point. So
does it feel different?
I think I had some trepidation before, but I feel fine.
Does it feel different than The Hobbit, or does it feel like a continuation of that story?
Feels different. Yes. I would say The Hobbit felt more... the journey just felt a lot more straightforward. You know, they had a mission, go get the treasure. There were some surprises along the way, but overall you kind of followed the single arc, whereas this one has these different journeys all converging on each other and these different peoples. The world feels a lot bigger in Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, I was thinking about that because this book, and I don't mean Two Towers, but the book 3 of the Lord of the Rings, which is the first half of the Two Towers, we're just on basically following, well, we're still following two storylines, but it's kind of just this group that has been left behind. Not left behind. We're not with Frodo and Sam at all.
Yep.
There was none of their story.
Hope they're okay.
Yeah, hope they're okay.
I would have followed them to the fires of Mordor.
But we're still splitting off. And I was wondering, was this a common writing technique during this time? Because I know that when some movies do it, like Star Wars does it a lot, where you're following this story and then you jump back to this story, and it's good because you never feel like anything lags.
Yeah.
The movies are jumping back and forth pretty continuously between different parts, and this one we just stayed with Aragorn. Or, did I have a question?
I feel like you were asking me if this was a common story writing technique.
Yeah.
Which I am not qualified to comment on, other than...
Which was folly from the start.
I do see it in other stories, and I like it.
Yeah, did it feel like we just read a whole book?
Kind of, though. Like, we're not...
It was
still
long.
Feels like there's some things, some loose ends we've got to go tie up.
Right.
You know? Thought it was interesting. I kind of expected Gandalf to annihilate Saruman, and instead it was like, you can stay here in this tower and just be a broken husk of yourself.
The end,
maybe that's better. I don't know.
The end of this book is really funny, especially with how insistent Gandalf is to Treebeard about watching Saruman, if you know the rest of the book. So anyway, I won't spoil that, but it is kind of funny. I was reading and I was like, wow, Gandalf is really trying to make sure that Treebeard doesn't let Saruman escape.
Which, that's my point is, it's kind of, those movies where you're like, just kill him so then he doesn't come back and get you later.
Yeah.
Why doesn't he? Anyways, but it's a common good guy problem.
Yeah, so other than that, about our experience in the book, I love these books, but, for you, it's a little off pace, especially what I almost feel like I coerced you into reading these books because you were all game for the the C.S. Lewis books. But this is different. It's a different feel.
Yeah.
Um,
I like to read, and I like a good story, and this is checking both those boxes. And I would say this one was slower on the uptake as far as me having some passion for it, but now I'm living in Middle Earth, so I'm passionate.
Good. That's what I'm kind of trying
Yeah.
to lead. That's it. That's what I was trying to lead you toward, is to see if I can get Dan to get to the point where he has his aha and it clicks and it feels like he gets it. Because usually that happens with all of the difficult books. You know, it's funny, with Pilgrim's Regress, you were right there at the start, like Till We Have Faces or...
Till We Have Faces was a similar... I don't know where the story is taking me, and I don't feel from the beginning like I am latched on, or what would I say? What I'm trying to figure out is, what is it I'm looking for in a book, or why is it that the Pilgrim's Regress could pull me in so quickly, yet other stories might take me a while before I find something that really pulls me in. I don't know. I'll think about that.
Speaking of Till We Have Faces, that is a book that I'd like to redo, just because I don't feel like our recordings. Well, there's some audio stuff that I feel embarrassed about, but
I'm there. Just tell me when you
Okay,
want to
good.
record.
Well, let's just jump right into the summary.
Okay. Boromir is slain. Alex did not bury the lead. The orcs capture Merry and Pippin and march in haste to Isengard. Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli attempt a hopeless pursuit on foot, only to find the remains of the orc host slaughtered by the Riders of Rohan. But clues of the hobbits' escape lead the trio into Fangorn Forest, where they reunite with Gandalf, resurrected after his fall in Moria. The four companions go to Edoras, where Gandalf releases King Theodin of the bewitchment of Saruman. They ride to Helm's Deep to aid the Rohirim in the defense against the onslaught of Saruman's armies, while the Ents march on Isengard. Rohan is successfully defended, and Isengard is overthrown. A lot of pronunciation going on there.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No. Themes.
I have friendship.
Oh.
I think friendship's been a theme we've used before, but specifically the duty that comes with friendship. So I kind of have two themes, but I think they're really just one. Maybe there's two different angles to duty. There's the duty of friendship, and when I say that word, I'm thinking of Nacho Libre and the priestly duties. But also duty unto death, and what duty means. I'm just trying to figure out a way I can say duty more. What about you? You've got some.
Well, I want to hear you talk about your themes,
Oh.
but I had truth versus deceit. And I liked that there's a quote when it's talking about the men. Let's see. It's talking about Aragorn. Oh, no. The men of the mark do not lie. Therefore, they are not easily deceived. So there's that principle or idea that, like, if you're truthful in how you speak and how you direct yourself, that you also have the benefit of being able to see through deceit.
Yeah, that comes up a couple times, right? I think even talking about Wormtongue, something
Yes.
about his inability to trust, or even the Dunlendings, the people, the wild men of Dunland.
Yeah.
That there's something about, like, dishonest lifestyle makes everybody dishonest to you, whether they're dishonest or not. You know, you just can't see honesty anymore because you've lost your relationship with truth.
Yes. And then you see it again, and I'm sure we'll talk about it later, with Saruman and Gandalf.
Mm-hmm.
And it also has a good line about it there too. So I just felt like it was a theme that came up multiple times, just highlighting the power and dynamics that comes with someone who's truthful and honest, and then what happens to our character as we let ourselves become twisted by deceit.
Great.
So talk to me about duty unto death.
Well, there's a couple of things. This book, I think, had a lot of examples of somebody who has like this a duty, some moral requirement based on their personal moral alignment to go through with something that is very uncomfortable or might even lead to their death. I'm thinking of Aragorn making the decision to go after Merry and Pippin. You know, Legolas is right there with them, and but they kind of counsel together a little bit, but you know, the decision is do this very difficult and uncomfortable thing where you don't even know if it will work.
Remind me, what was their other option? It was go after Merry and Pippin or
go to Gondor.
Go straight to Gondor.
There was Aragorn has his own purpose. It's not just this fellowship. He has his purpose. He's going to return as the king. Spoiler. He wanted to go to Gondor. He's on his way to Gondor to kind of lay claim to as the rightful king of Gondor. And so that's his journey. He's got his own priorities. And yet, because he has made his own personal oath, which remember, Elrond didn't hold the fellowship to an oath. He left that up to them. So this is Aragorn's own choice to be committed to these friends and to do whatever it takes, especially the littlest of their company, the most inconsequential to whatever goal they're trying to achieve. Merry and Pippin, they don't even know why they're in the fellowship, really.
Yeah.
And they regret having joined a couple times. You know, they say, like, why did we ever decide? Why didn't we listen to the Council of Elrond and not go with Frodo? And so there's plenty of excuse that Aragorn or Legolas or Gimli could have to not go and try to rescue them. And they knew from the start that it probably was going to be fruitless, because these new orcs, these Uruk-hai, they're traveling in the day.
Yeah.
And if they're traveling in the day when they'd prefer to travel at night, that means they're not sleeping at night either. And so it's just like this really grueling march. It reminds me of The Horse and His Boy. Smell of hot horse, smell of hot self, you know. And then they're even having to, like, you know, Legolas doesn't have to sleep, so you can see why he kind of wants to keep going. But they have to make these difficult decisions. And every time Aragorn is just like, well, we got to do this thing. There's this line, and I'll bring it up right here. But when they realize that there's no way they're going to overtake this orc horde, Gimli says, it's an end to our hope and also our toils. And Aragorn's response is, to our hope maybe, but not our toil. And so this idea, the willingness to toil, to do something that is difficult, to move the piano, even when there's no utility in it, because you're duty bound. Even if the oath is just to yourself, and that's friendship, right? Possibly, they're going possibly even to death. And you see this again with Theoden, you know, and he has the honor of a king weighing on him a little bit as well, but going to ride out from from Helm's gates, and they don't know the aid that is coming or the aid that has been there all night, really. And so in his mind, and Aragorn goes with him too, they ride out assuming to their death. But because they have this duty to do that, it's just an interesting take where there's no excuse from doing what you know you should do just because it won't work. And this is kind of a Norse mythology type thing. Going into battle knowing you'll lose. And that ties in with kind of this underlying theme from all of Tolkien's work, which is the long defeat and eventual victory through eucatastrophe, right? But it's not looking or counting on the eucatastrophe. It always comes in unlooked for ways.
I'm trying to think I want to say somewhere in one of our C.S. Lewis books, there's this theme of what does he say? What does Theoden say before they go into battle? You know, at least there'll be a good story, like even though we're going to get destroyed. But I'm trying to think if there's a C.S. Lewis book where they say something similar, where
Sounds like Doug.
sounds like Last Battle.
Sounds like Last Battle. Exactly. King Tyrion.
Yeah.
And Jewel. And it's just like, well, let's go on the journey that Aslan sends us, maybe to death.
Yeah.
And not only maybe to death, but most likely to. And it's just like there's zero evidence that that it will be fruitful or that it will be successful at all, and they do it anyway.
And I think these are great themes for anyone who considers themselves Christian or a disciple of Christ in the last days, because some of the scriptures look pretty dreary.
Yeah.
You need to have a little bit of that, like, we do know the end will be right, but we don't know what our fate will be on the way there.
Yeah, especially
And we have to be okay with that.
Looking around the world, and it almost feels like, barring miracle, it seems like we're doomed.
That was dark. Hold on, let me turn up the air conditioning in my nice little podcast suite. Should we take a break and come back?
Yeah, let's do it.
Hi, my name is Theo, and I have a podcast called The Theo Show, where me and my dad talk about interesting things we're learning and try to understand them better. It's a short, fun podcast for kids and parents to enjoy together. And if you like learning new things in a simple way, this podcast is for you. So after this episode, go check out The Theo Show on Spotify or Apple Podcast. See you there!
Welcome back, fellow book club members. Alex, where do we want to start with this first section?
I want to start with Boromir.
What a guy.
Yeah, dying.
It's no Aragorn, but
Like I spoiled last time.
It's more relatable than Aragorn to the rest of us mortals.
He is. Yeah, it's interesting. The character resonates a lot with a lot of people. And maybe it's in the movies he's played by Sean Bean, and it's hard to dislike that guy. He dies, and Aragorn, or he's dying with several arrows in his body, huge black feathered arrows. The movie does it really well. This scene is one of the more heart-wrenching in all of film, in my opinion. And Aragorn comes to him, and his first thing that Boromir says is he tells him what he did. He tells Aragorn that he tried to take the ring. He's been kind of secretive and had his own agenda.
Not dishonest, but he didn't share the whole truth.
That's right. And just, he's dying. He knows he's dying. And the first thing he says is when Aragorn comes to him is to tell him exactly the truth. And he tried to take it. And he's concerned about the Merry and Pippin because they've been taken by the orcs. And it really is kind of this deathbed confessional for him. He dies well because he dies honestly and with all of his motivation pointed in the right direction. And I think that's a theme, that's a Lewisian theme. Where you are right now is important, but it's not as important as the direction you're going, right? You can be somebody who has a lot of, I don't want to say a virtuous person because your intention matters, but you might have a lot of momentum. Let's say righteous momentum, if that, and if your arrow, the arrow of your motivation or the path that you're on is pointed away from that, that's a worse place to be than if you've been living the life of a heathen, but the arrow of your motivation is pointed in the direction of virtue, right? In that hideous strength. Lewis even talks about that with animals, right? Mr. Bultitude is more human, at least from a meaningful perspective, because he's becoming more human than somebody like Divine, or in that book he's called Feverstone. His arrow is in the direction of animality, of being what's the term? What's the not motivated, but being controlled by his appetites, being controlled by his belly instead of his chest. And so that idea of like where your motivation is, how you've changed, a repentant sinner is no worse than somebody who has not sinned. And not that your sin really is giving you that anything other than perspective, but repentance is real. Like forgiveness, at least from God, is real and complete. And so if you've decided to change your course, to alter your motivations, to point your arrow toward God, he'll give you more credit than you deserve. And it's like you've been there all along.
Yeah, and another thing I see in this is Boromir, he showed up for the Fellowship of the Ring. He went along the quest. He helped the group. And his grappling with the power of the ring and his role and what he viewed as far as what he could do to fight Sauron, he did so many good things. This was an honorable, brave, good person who, yes, did have a moment of weakness where he ultimately succumbed to the power of the ring, which I don't think we're supposed to look at that and look down on him for that. I mean, pretty much everybody succumbs to the power of the ring over time.
Yeah, it's one of those dangers where it's not the mastery over it is avoidance.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that I'll bring that almost seems like another theme. Maybe it reaches beyond just this book, but some dangers, their mastery is not in dominating it, but in avoiding it.
Yeah. Casting it away from ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
I liked when I liked the line with Aragorn where he had said, "How can a man know what to do at any given time?" Which I think this is just relevant to all of us at any given time. And Aragorn says something to the effect of, "We always have good and evil, like the choice between good and evil, and it's the same between elves and dwarves and men. It's man's duty to discern between them just as much out here in the woods as in their own house." And like that is the crux. That's the question, is how is your decision making going between good and evil today? I loved that.
What was he addressing with that?
It was, I think they were talking about the futility of, they've chased them out here on the plains. I think the orcs were gone and the hobbits weren't there. And so they were kind of in the middle of this quest and not really knowing what to do next. And Aragorn's point was, you might not know directionally. I think his point was, you might not know directionally where we need to go on this quest, but as far as what to do, the right thing.
Yeah.
The good thing. That's
Right.
what we're going to go do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Exactly what that is might be difficult to discern, but whatever that is, that's what you're going to try to do.
Yeah. And we've come back to that topic a bunch of times with C.S. Lewis and in this podcast. It's that idea of, we talked about it. It was actually my mom calling me to talk about the Hobbit episode and saying, I really loved how you talked about not waiting to receive your mission or the clear instructions of what you're supposed to go do in your life, but that each of us has instruction enough to act for the good now. And same type of thing.
Yeah.
You have a note here, an end to our hope and toil, Sisyphus.
That's from my theme.
Oh, yeah.
Like Gimli saying, an end to our hope and thus our toil. And Aragorn saying, our hope maybe, but not our toil. And what it reminded me of was just like a life of toil that seems awful. Like, oh, you live, you pay taxes, and you die, sort of thing. And Sisyphus is this Greek myth of a guy who's pushing a boulder up a mountain just for it to roll back down to the foot of the mountain for him to start and push the boulder up the mountain again. Pushing a boulder up a mountain, Seems like the worst thing. It's very piano-esque. You may as well be pushing a piano up the stairs or something. And to realize, and a lot of people in their journey toward wisdom kind of come to the realization that the toil is the joy. It's not, I'm pushing this boulder up the mountain. Now, C.S. Lewis would say, well, if you couldn't journey hopefully, or if there was no destination, then you could never honestly journey hopefully, right? So there has to be some destination. It's not just the toil that is where the joy is. It's the fact that you might not know how to get to the joy, but you know toil is a part of it. Toil is part of your responsibility. It reminded me when we were talking about Kierkegaard's Night of Faith, that he brings up in his book, Fear and Trembling, and the difference between a night of infinite resignation. This is somebody who's looking at life like Sisyphus pushing the boulder up the mountain and thinking, well, I'm willing to do it, and I'm going to hate every bit of it, but I'm willing to just do it. Aragorn doesn't really have that mentality to the toil. You can kind of tell in Gimli, he's pushing against a lot of dwarvish inclinations or tendencies. He's trying to have a good attitude about it, and he's really a lovable and very relatable type of character. But he is almost trying to look for an excuse. Can we sleep tonight? Can we stop our toil? I'm willing to run. I'm going to keep up with this elf here, but maybe let's do something a little more comfortable, even though dwarves are super hardy sort of thing. And Aragorn doesn't have the Sisyphusian attitude, or I guess his version of the Sisyphusian attitude is, no, we're going to toil. And I'm not even going to complain about it. I'm not going to act like this is a burden I have to do this duty, this difficult, hard thing, but yeah, it's my duty, so I got to keep doing it. No, he almost says that, I don't know if you know the comedian Pete Holmes. He's one of those comedians that's funny in a way that's not really traditionally comedian type funny. He seems like he's just a really insightful, funny person. And he has a little mantra, not a mantra. He has a little phrase that he says when things that are uncomfortable or he gets disappointing information, which is, yes, thank you. And to just say, yes, thank you, like the example he uses is at the airport and he finds out his flight is delayed. Yes, thank you. And it's intentionally just reframing bad news by saying thank you to it, but also it's saying yes to things that are just true. What's the point of getting caught up in things that aren't true, like your plane is on time, or I wish my plane were on time, right? You're living in fantasy world. The Tinadrill would say you're living in the alongside, you're telling a story in the alongside place, not in reality. She wouldn't put it that way, but even that idea of imagining things that Weston teaches her, trying to assume that some abstract or other alternative reality that can only exist through other choices that you didn't make is somehow a good place for your mind to linger. It's not. Lingering in reality is a good place to linger. It's a good place to be. And the Pete Holmes thing, yes, thank you, is just saying yes to the thing that's true. It's not an end to our toil. We didn't find the hobbits, and we need to find the hobbits. Yes. Just say yes to that. And thank you. Have an attitude that the toil that you might want to think of as discomfort, thinking about the discomfort before you do it will just decrease your willingness to do the thing you have to do. But having an attitude of gratitude in even the difficult parts of your responsibility can reframe toil into, whether it's something good, it's just affirming that even the ability to do work is a blessing.
Yeah. The strength of that perspective or character trait, we talked about in the Silver Chair with Puddleglum, that when they were on top world, his Puddleglum nature was, it's always a downer and whatever. But then once they were under the world, and I can't remember the name of the two kids in that book, but once they started to lose faith, Puddleglum was the one who carries them through. And even when they're with the witch, it was his ability to live in reality, maybe, or just kind of accept things as they came, that made him the bedrock in that moment. And then also Bard from The Hobbit. Same thing, that the town people thought he was so sober. He was so, come on, guy, lighten up, come drink a beer. And yet once the dragon's attacking and they're in war, he becomes the one they're looking for. So that strength and acceptance of reality, like raw acceptance that you see from Aragorn, I think that's the same thing that makes these characters, it's what makes them a real king.
Yeah.
Is the ability to operate, to interact with duty in that way in their lives, to view it that way, to carry it out that way.
Yeah, I like that you associated Puddleglum with reality, because in the overworld, it's not that he's just a downer. It's he doesn't let himself get caught up in the wishful thinking that Eustace and Jill, that Eustace and Jill are tempted to, especially when the Green Witch is like, go to Harfang and you'll be comfortable there, and hiding some really important details. But then the effect that has on Eustace and Jill is that while they're on their way to Harfang, they're miserable because they keep thinking of an imaginary better situation than where they are right now. And because where they are right now is a little uncomfortable, Puddleglum just accepting it, saying yes to it, yes, reality, makes him seem like a downer sometimes. But then when they're underground, the reality isn't as bleak as their surroundings would make them think. It seems hopeless, but as far as their journey, it's not as uncomfortable. They're not in like sleet and hail like they were
they're
above.
still on a mission they were sent on by Aslan. They still have each other.
Even though they're confronted by, the creepy cave people, they're still not really in danger. Nothing bad is happening to them.
Yeah.
Right? Is it Jill who, when she realizes she's underground, it says that it was like the worst moment of her life or something. And it's like, why?
Is it?
Yeah. That's all just some projection of your expectations that's taking a really, yes, fearful, a scary situation because you don't know what's going to come next. But at least right now, nothing bad is happening.
So you have another note here, and this might take us pretty far outside the story, but this, for me, with a bunch of kids, I feel like I've arrived. Well,
you've arrived.
I've arrived. So I was debating this with a good friend of mine about how nowadays it's very in vogue and popular to kind of treat scripture as something that is a la carte. If it speaks to you, if it reinforces what you want to believe or what God is to you, then good, accept it. And I get it because, scriptural interpretation, translation, we can go down a rabbit hole on that. But there's something about casting off any duty to something that I don't like or that doesn't align with how I want to think about God or how my relationship with him. And so I feel like I have arrived at this place that this Aragorn-esque approach or Puddleglum approach to duty and to reality, I see it as healthy and good and something that I'm striving to align myself more with. But the question of how do we teach this to our kids and what was the process? I think reading these stories and seeing what a character like Aragorn, who approaches duty this way, is able to accomplish, the good he's able to bring into the world because he approaches duty this way. I think this is one way of doing that. But what other thoughts do you have?
Well, talking about Puddleglum and reality and just experiencing reality without muddling it. I think muddle with Puddleglum is pretty good to use the word. I've been criticized for this behavior before, but I've talked about my daughter having kind of these expectations that lead her down paths of emotional turmoil that aren't present in reality. And sometimes my kids, when they cry, I'm not the type of parent that just thinks, let them cry. Don't tell a kid not to cry. Yeah, if there's something to cry about, I'm the quintessential dad, there better be something to cry about if you're crying. And there's good in that, mostly because when a child is in distress and crying about something that's imaginary, something about their expectations, something that's not real, really happening to them, that doesn't mean that their mind doesn't convince them that it's real. If you allow a child to cry about something that is not dangerous, that's not painful, that's not sad, you're letting them be in this imaginary world of misery that's non-existent. Why would you do that to your child? Why would you encourage that they be distraught? Or why would you encourage some mental experience of tragedy when there is no tragedy? It looks like a good, gentle thing for a parent to do, to affirm all of your, or validate all of your child's feelings. No, don't validate lies. That's just a good rule of thumb. Don't validate lies. So if your kid's crying and there's nothing really to cry about, tell them. Don't scold them about it. Don't yell at them or get mad, but just matter-of-factly tell them there's nothing sad happening right now. So I want you to stop crying because it's making your body feel like there's something sad happening right now. It's thinking about how bad the situation is when it's really not that bad. It's creating an alongside place. It's creating a different narrative that is not in line with reality, and it's not helpful either.
The line that comes to mind is just you're teaching them that they have a duty to reality.
Yes, right. So bringing that back.
You're behaving in a way that you're shirking your duty to recognize that this isn't a sad moment.
Yeah. Even though with Aragorn, he chose the duty that he would have, the type of person that he is accepting that you don't get to choose what that duty feels like.
Yeah.
Right. And we give our kids too many choices. We brainwash them into thinking that they have more control over reality than they do. When you take your kid to a restaurant, order for them. Don't give them this idea that they can just make demands and it will appear in front of them because they're not engaged with the transaction, the monetary transaction of that process. It seems controlling and demanding, but if you're a parent and you don't realize that parent is synonymous with manipulator, then you really don't understand what your role is. Your children are in this phase of learning what real world is. And if you're not going to help them understand what reality is, what are you for? What are you doing? That's like your number one job, is to help their minds create a structure where they can understand the truth. So if they're in a headspace that's not in line with reality, it's your job to take them out of it and teach them how to take themselves out of it. So there's so many things that are common to our cultural conception of what a good parent is that are antithetical to the development of a duty mindset, which is that you have responsibilities, or you need to be able to have responsibilities. And what a responsibility is, no matter how you feel, you have the duty to act a certain way. So are you training your kids to think that they should get whatever they want? Or are you training them that they need to act the right way no matter what they get? Are you helping the arrow of the development of their responsibility? Is it in line with truth, especially with their future? So, and I have to tell my kids this all the time. I have to do a lot of things, even as dad. It might look like I get to choose to watch TV whenever I want, or play video games whenever I want. And in a way, that's kind of true. Because there's nobody telling me I can't. There's nobody who's making rules for me that I'm not supposed to, waste my time. Well, maybe my wife, but that I'm not supposed to waste my time away like that. It's important that I make those rules for myself. Are you helping your kids develop the skill to see what needs to be done no matter how they feel? And are they making rules for themselves to follow it, even when they're hangry, right?
You heard it here first, parents. What the heck are you doing? That was the quote that I liked. Thanks, Alex. What the heck are we doing?
Sorry about that.
I loved it.
No, it's funny when I get kind of on the soapbox mode. I'm not very good at filtering what comes across to other people's ears as being.
No one tuned in today being like, I hope Alex filters.
No, but I'm glad for your feedback.
I may not like it, but it's good. Should we take a break
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
This episode is brought to you by active listening. Did you know that listening is more than just hearing what someone says? It's using your ears and brain together to understand. When someone talks to you, don't just wait for your turn to speak. Focus on their words with your ears and brain turned on. If you don't understand a word they used or something they said was confusing, ask them what they mean. You can also repeat back what you heard in your own words to check if you get it. That shows you're really paying attention. And if you're still confused, it's okay to ask more questions. Active listening helps you know what people are trying to tell you, and it makes talking and following directions a lot easier. Okay, now back to the show.
Okay, welcome back. And it's been good so far, but I'm excited. We didn't get to talk about the Ents yet, Treebeard. And you have a note about Treebeard and CSL. Hit me.
Treebeard is modeled after C.S. Lewis.
What?
Yeah, that's the
Oh, yes.
even his patterns of speech, and apparently when C.S. Lewis would be talking to
J.R. Tolkien said this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. I love this. I love the
kind of the rum, and
yeah.
And Lewis had some idiosyncratic behaviors when he would talk and pontificate. And
oh yeah, we listened to a recording of him reading, and
yeah.
he did like the. I'm trying to think. You could probably imitate it better than I could.
I'm not going to.
Oh come on, come on.
But we even talked.
You're invited on an adventure. Accept the invitation.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
We'd even talked about like how he had when he would lecture, he would sometimes start his lecture before he entered the room, and then leave the room as he's closing his lecture.
I would have loved to sit in one of those.
But just kind of like this long-winded. The joke is that J.R.R. Tolkien, when he patterned characters after people he knew, like his wife, who is Luthien, the most beautiful elf ever, and seriously, like that's her reputation, is Luthien is this character that's known just for her beauty and her grace. And there's a marriage between her and a human, Baron, and on their tombstones they have Baron and Luthien. That's what J.R.R. Tolkien put for him and his wife.
Cool.
So when he writes his wife into the story, it's this almost angelic elf princess. And then when he writes his best friend, it's this really long-winded tree who is kind of grumpy, and I guess in the book he's not grumpy at all.
Yeah, I didn't feel like he was.
No, but he's just really long-winded and takes a long time to get around to making some points, and is a little critical of word choice. And you could see he's like even making sure that the hobbits get added to the right list of all the different creatures. And And maybe it's a little bit of an insight into seeing how C.S. Lewis was just in conversation. But I'm not sure if that tidbit's that important, but
I just think it's really cool.
so like from Treebeard, now that you have that connection with C.S. Lewis, is there anything that you think either tracks with who you know Lewis to be or is kind of insightful to this person that you know through his works, but maybe not as a person?
I think, well, I'll speak for myself. I think I look to C.S. Lewis as a tree, a pillar, someone who's extremely consistent, and not that he didn't develop and grow over time, but he had this foundation once he rooted himself in Christianity that feels bedrock, more solid than rock, because the trees ripped apart the rocks. I love when it says that when they're ripping apart Isengard, it's like, oh, we did the work that normally takes hundreds of years in just a few seconds because they were riled up and whatever. That slow, quiet strength, and how powerful that can be in a moment, but it takes centuries to build to that.
Yeah.
To me, that just feels very C.S. Lewis, like his content, his testimony, his character.
Yeah, that's a great insight. I was thinking the Ents kind of represent nature in a way, almost like a Tom Bombadil type nature, a harmony with it. You can see there's a dark side to it. They're compared kind of to trolls. They're almost like the uncorrupted version of a troll, but they're in tune with, they're old and they're connected with things, and everything that is progress for progress sake is kind of antithetical to what an Ent is. Ents are like part of nature. There's kind of green knight or green man kind of vibe to them, almost pagan type vibe, or druidism to them. So there's a lot of like Merlin, the character in That Hideous Strength, kind of reminds me a little bit of Treebeard.
Yeah. You also had the allusion to them being shepherds for the other trees, which is cool.
Right. So they're kind of like, they're shepherds, but they're also kind of a tree themselves. So there's this very Taoist kind of aspect to them. I'm thinking even the Tao of the natural order, like what C.S. Lewis calls the natural order in The Abolition of Man, that there's something that just natural to it. We talked a little bit about wildness before, and he's a lot like the uncorrupt version of wildness. There's even a comparison between Mirkwood and Fangorn. And Fangorn's dangerous, but it's not dangerous in the same way that Mirkwood is dangerous. Mirkwood is rotten and corrupted in a lot of ways, and Fangorn's just tree-ish. I think that's what is it. I think Pippin says that, or anyway.
He's not a tame lion.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So that aspect, even that aspect
Dangerous?
of wildness.
We'll get there.
And danger is, I think, personified in Treebeard. And I think for the relationship with Tolkien and Lewis, that Lewis really brought, and I think because of his kind of pagan, not so much a pagan background, but his interest in the occult, and also his love for fairyland, right? And his love for things that might thematically vibe not so much with Christianity, but with paganism in a way that, with the help of George MacDonald, his idea was that paganism was ready for conversion to Christianity in a way that, atheism isn't. And so allowing yourself to kind of feel, I don't know enough about this, but
you're still looking up to something. You're still trying to worship versus atheism or pride, where you can't see what's above you because you're not looking up.
Right. It still involves the idea of worship.
You're still willing to be humble and subjugate yourself. You just need the right power to do it. And that reminds me of the last battle as far as Tash to Aslan. It was an immediate, like, for those that were truly faithful and had their heart in the right place, switching to Aslan was a finger snap.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So, and seeing Jesus as the myth becoming fact.
Yeah.
So that mythological aspect of nature, that's kind of what Treebeard is.
You're making me miss C.S. Lewis.
Good. I want to create that longing in you.
Okay. All right.
I while we're on Treebeard, he makes a big fuss about names,
He does.
which kind of sounds like using the right words, and that words have meanings. The Romeo and Juliet line, "What's in a name?" Well, Treebeard will tell you, right? He doesn't even tell the hobbits his name. There's a couple things that he says about his name. Let's see if I can remember. A name tells you where you came from. Aragorn keeps shouting Elendil. Elendil is the name of Isildur and Anarion, their dad. They were the kings, so the king of Gondor and Arnor.
Okay.
When Aragorn says Elendil, he's basically calling out his family lineage. He's in the line of Elendil through Isildur. That's his heritage. That's his birthright to the throne. Then you have Gimli. He says the word Khazad a lot when he's, and that's the dwarf, you can remember Khazad Dûm, right?
Yeah.
It's this dwarf term for Moria, which is, connected to the Durin's folk, which Gimli is as a dwarf from that line. And then you have all the Rohirim, when you have Theodin calling Eorlingus. Errol is like they're from the line of Errol, and that Ingus at the end means like children of. And so they're often calling out their lineage whenever they need to be rallied in motivation to go into battle. And I think that's interesting. In our modern culture, I don't think that we do that a lot, where we really are seeing what's my motivation. In fact, it's looked down on, especially from certain cultures, to not see your heritage as something that's worth fighting for. And why? It's not about, from a globalist perspective, seeing which one is better than the other so much. It's just because that's the one I'm part of. I'm playing on the team that is the one I was born into, And I think that's kind of all of our responsibilities. Maybe that's not intentionally the theme, but it's kind of what, when Treebeard's talking about a name, and a name is about where you came from, and a name means more. It's your story, and you don't just tell people your whole everything about your motivation right away until you can trust them. So,
yeah. I'm thinking about nature versus nurture, and how we are is coded into the DNA that we're inheriting from our family. And if you really did look back at your family tree and what you've inherited, right, through this line, it adds so much story and meaning to what you do accomplish in your life, because there's the baseline of whatever genetic thing you inherited, and then on top of that is that layer of agency and choice of where you chose to go. And so if you came from a kingly line, there's an expectation there, but maybe if you don't, another way to look at it is that, all right, I'm like, that layer of agency is all the more important because I'm layering that on top of the inherited line. Charging the gates.
Oh, this was the example of Theoden and Aragorn charging out into possibly their death, but because it was the right way to go out. If you're going to die, do it swinging your sword. And the last march of the Ents is very similar. Treebeard even says, possibly to our doom. And he even almost gives some last words before they do it.
But then you find out later from Merry and Pippin that they are difficult to kill.
Yeah, right.
Fill them full of arrows.
Right, but they didn't really even understand their collective strength because they're kind of solitary.
Yeah. But so, what do you see in that, the charging out for the last battle, the last march of the Ents, this willingness to go to your demise because there's something that you're fighting for that you think is more important than whatever the outcome is?
Yeah, I think of the line, everybody dies, but not everybody truly lives. I think when you really, so there's some research.
What show is that from? What is that from?
I don't know. It seems like cliche enough that it's probably Abraham Lincoln or Mark Twain. But there's this interesting research about the use of psychedelics in helping people to accept death, especially like end of life use to alleviate the fear of death and the imminence of death, or the fear of that, the imminence of death. Whatever the psychedelics do in the cases where it works, I'm not encouraging anything. In the cases where it does alleviate the fear of death, you might think that that would heighten the risk of suicide, but it does the opposite. People who have the fear of death removed, or not removed, but overcome it a little bit, they actually are less likely to commit suicide. I'm not sure if there's an exact causal link or if there's some other variable that's causing it, but on the assumption that they are connected, I think there's something that's really instructive about the way that you see life and the way that you see toil, the way that you see the vicissitudes, the difficulties, whatever's making you feel, and have that thought in your mind that might come more regularly than you feel comfortable with, which is, I'm a sad person, right? Life's hard and I don't like it and I just wish things would go away. I think that a lot of that is, in a way, a manifestation of the fear of mortality, of the fear of death.
Yeah.
That if you accept life, if you say, yes, thank you, to even the difficult parts of life, that there's no reason to try to escape it at all. And I even in Out of the Silent Planet, there's this thing that this moment when Ransom is escaping from Weston and Divine, it says he knew enough psychology to know that this sensation he was having of giving himself back, returning, or giving up and yielding to the hunters hunting him, the prey psychology of like laying down and yielding, that's something that happens when you're really afraid. And so if you can conquer that fear, if you can get over, maybe conquer and get over is not the right word or the way of thinking about it. Accept it. It's almost like you got to yield to something. Are you going to yield to something that's real, something that happens to all of us? We're all going to die. If you can accept that reality, then you don't have to control everything so much. You don't have to try to make sure that you're not uncomfortable. Uncomfortable might just be the truth of your reality.
The last several weeks, I've gotten calls from friends and family, and a lot about AI advancing because we've made these huge leaps forward with, ChatGPT, and now what is it? Claude. It's the latest and greatest. And in these conversations, it's interesting to dig into like what's causing this fear. And it's this idea of replacement of, what's going to happen if there's no more jobs and the economy tanks. And it's interesting to go through that line of questioning and, well, what are you really afraid of? Like, are you afraid that you're not going to be able to eat? Are you, and it becomes I think the things that financial security gives us is an ability to be less attached to death, or less attached to the reality of death, because we have so many nice things to distract us and life is pretty good. And I think when we think of that scenario, none of them said, well, no, like we'll probably be able to like feed ourselves and take care of ourselves. Okay, well, you have your family, you're able to eat and have shelter. Like, well, what are you worried about? And I think that going through, at least, hopefully it's never an actual exercise, but going through the mental exercise of stripping away everything else down to the bare minimum. I would just say I see some of this thinking in these fears, and I think that there's a deeper fear of that we all. There's a deeper fear that we have of confronting. Nope.
Let's see if this sparks the connection you're trying
Go
to
ahead.
make. So you know Brian Johnson?
Is that the never die guy?
Don't die guy. Yeah.
Don't die guy.
What's kind of funny about that whole idea is it's silly because it's not going to work. He's going to die.
Maybe.
Well, that hideous strength fills my mind with a bunch of nightmares of what if he is successful. That's not necessarily a good thing. The idea that if you live forever, you'll be happy in that situation. One of the reasons is this thought experiment. It's not really a thought experiment, but a supposal. If you know somebody who's on their deathbed and they're a really happy person, are they kicking and screaming against the inevitability of death?
No.
You can see that even in our just like wisdom, just the wisdom of our experiences, we know that people who are happy accept the inevitable. They're not fighting against it. I know it seems obvious, but you can imagine that there's a belief, this hidden belief behind the idea of never die, don't die. That life, if life is so great, you're gonna, rage against the dying of the light. I'm so happy, I'm enjoying life so much that when life comes to get me, I'm going to be kicking and screaming, no, I'm too happy to die, right? That seems silly because maybe it's this je ne sais quoi about happiness and people we know and experiences and what else we know about those people and their view of life, that those don't really fit. And yet somebody who's fighting against death and trying to never die, it seems like they have that premise hidden in their whole ideology that if you're happy, you'll never want to die.
Well, and happy is a fraught word, right? Like that's not my goal, is to feel happy every day. But the word that comes to mind is content or peaceful. And how can you say you're content if you're not actually content with the time allotted to you?
Oh, that's a great,
right? Like,
yeah.
If you actually are content and at peace, then you get to be the Taoist who's accepting of what it is, of what is that is. You know what I mean?
Yeah, happiness isn't about having control over every aspect of life, even life itself. It's about saying yes, thank you.
Yeah, didn't you say there's a picture and there's 3 different guys?
The vinegar tasters.
The vinegar tasters. And isn't the Taoist have just like a smile on his face because he's like, yes, this is vinegar.
Yeah.
It's exactly, and that's exactly what you're saying. Yes, please, it's vinegar.
Yeah, I didn't realize there would be such a Taoist angle to this episode.
Welcome. All right, Saruman and
the voice
the voice
of Saruman. This is prophetic. There's a lot of this, and I think this angle of the voice of Saruman and subsequently the Palantir, that are so much more applicable. Obviously, he's writing it because it's applicable in his time as well. There were equivalents at the time that he was writing this, but I think it's become more of a danger, or at least the ring, the ring adjusts to fit your finger, adjusts its size. It even does it to Tom Bombadil, even though it doesn't have an effect on him. And the ring has adjusted for our time.
Yeah.
Well,
I want to make sure we loop back to a couple things we've referenced, because it was all, for me, it was tied up in this moment. So they hear his voice. I like that it said everything it said sounded wise and reasonable, and a desire awoke in them to sound wise and reasonable.
Oh.
Okay. And so my thought with that is not to be wise or reasonable,
right.
to appear wise and reasonable.
To make a really
the calling
clever
to appear
post. Right?
And the difference, and juxtapose those two, that idea with going back to Aragorn of we may not have hope, but we will have toil.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's a call here when you are trying to appear or sound wise or appear and sound like something, then you do not have duty in mind.
Oh, yeah.
You can't have duty in mind as you're still trying to appear like something, to sound like something to other people. So I loved that.
Oh man, maybe it's my duty to not sound ridiculous here, and that's why when I worry about coming across, no, just trying to make it all about me again. No, that's a great point. That when you have duty in mind, it's the fear of man over the fear of God. If you're afraid of how you come across, obviously, since God sees everything, all truth about you, there's no fooling him, and there's no hiding from him. That if you're trying to come across as any other way than exactly how you are, it's for the fear of man that you're doing it. So the duty is keeping God in mind. I mean, you can obviously have duties to other things, but
Yeah.
no, that's a great point.
And then I love when he starts talking to the King Theodin, and he's obsequious with his praise. Yeah, so he lays it on thick as far as trying to treat him like, hey, we're neighbors, we're equals, you're the king. I know you've made this misstep with joining Gandalf, but like this can be forgiven.
Patronizing?
I didn't take it as patronizing.
More flattery?
I thought the voice was to everyone except Gimli and Gandalf. Most people were taking this hook, line, and sinker for being sincere.
Sure,
I don't know if the king saw through it, and then when Gimli speaks up, and he kind of turns to him and is like, "We're not talking to you, Gimli, son of Glowin."
Yeah, and they hear in the voice,
"You're just a dwarf."
Yeah, it is interesting the different ways that people's true intentions are betrayed. That also reminded me of the Green Witch, right? When Puddleglum sees through her, I think he stamps on the fire, and she calls him mud filth. And she went from this like sing-song instrumental almost type of beautiful voice to this like this shrieking nag sort of thing.
Yeah.
And it's like the disenchantment of that type of bewitchment is, I'm not sure what the angle is, but if you can look for tells, and when the person who's trying to flatter you or pull one over on you, it's like, do something they don't want you to do and see how they respond to it, even if just as a test.
And then when he speaks to Gandalf, and there's the moment where it says everyone thought that Gandalf was going to cave, like the power that they felt from the way that he was, and then also how his language switches, where all of a sudden it turned into, hey, the adults are talking, and you guys are just along for the ride of wherever we take you. Where before he was trying to treat them as equals, and then it flips, and then he's talking to Gandalf, and he's like, "Why do you even bring this filth to my door?" type of attitude.
Yeah. It's funny so it reminds me of the clevers, like always having the right answer to say to something. Just generally propaganda, right? Propaganda is to make you feel good about the thing you already believe. So that, it keeps you more firmly in that ideological trap, and that like all of our news is propaganda, like it's people get to pick and choose their news sources, and they pick the ones that make them feel like they've got everything figured out. I don't know if you probably haven't seen the show Community. There's this funny episode where all the main characters, they're a study group at a community college, and they're all in group therapy together. And the therapist, who's not really a therapist, but is trying to convince them that they've been in an insane asylum the whole time. And so he keeps almost like a Shutter Island telling them about experiences they had. It's one of those episodes that kind of brings up a lot of episodes before, and then reframes it as if they were just in the madhouse sort of thing. And anyway, they keep getting like lost in this trance of believing this thing. And the main guy, Jeff, he's like, stop letting him make you realize things. Which is just kind of funny from a therapy perspective, because people love to have that realization. We love to have answers for the mystery, even if it's totally wrong, but at least it gives us an explanation.
And the latch on to.
And so much of propaganda is taking mystery, maybe it's something that nobody knows, and it just gives you a way to explain it away. We love having that. It's called Gnosticism. We love to have the secret knowledge that nobody else has, and will even grab onto something that feels like secret knowledge, even if it's totally bogus, because if we can fool ourselves, then we're the wise fool, right? That's what Gandalf calls Saruman, the wise fool. And that's what Saruman means. The name, bringing up the name, is wise man. And so when Gimli says something like, when Gandalf appears to them and he says, we thought you were Saruman. And he says, I am Saruman, or Saruman as he should have been. And you see the meaning of those names.
Yeah.
And the wise fool is the one who's trying to sound a certain way. And the Saruman, the way that Saruman should be, is wise. Talk about things the way they really are.
So you wanted to make sure we circled back to this coat of many colors, or that shifts depending on every single angle.
Yeah.
And talking about this, what was it? Wise fool? What does he call him?
Yeah, wise fool.
And the contrast with this Gandalf the White, that is a singular thing, a singular color. That Saruman, you see this in his speech, that he's shifting depending on who he's talking to and who he's addressing. And at one point when he's talking to Gandalf, he's almost, again, kind of pleading with him to join him again. But then he's also talking down to him that he's a fool and whatever else. And anyways, it shows he has all the wisdom behind his words to say things perfectly. But because he keeps shifting, he's undermining himself every single time.
Because all of his wisdom is used as a weapon
to get what he wants.
That's right.
Not to defend a truth or to stand for something.
Yeah, think of Weston and Perelandra being able to make all these arguments, but it's just the whatever that spirit is behind him, using him as a tool and a toy. Yeah. And so, because white is all of the colors. That's where white comes from, at least in light.
But it's when it comes into focus, it doesn't shift.
Yeah, meaning comes from the synergy of the relationship of things. Right? What is the color of,
what is it? Only a foolish man takes something apart to
find out what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, the deconstructionist attitude of postmodernism, right, is to take white and think that turning it into a rainbow is somehow progress. And that is it's misunderstanding the value of the synergy of meaning. Wisdom is the way that the relationship of things, how they actually are. You've never experienced a detached quality. You only experience qualities in relation to things. Motion in relation to stationary things. If everything's moving, then you have no meaning. So that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that in reference to exactly the way that Saruman talks. Just picking and choosing. What did you call it? You called it cafeteria. Using the Bible,
scripture cafeteria, scripture reading. Like, right. I'll take this and this. And
right. Are you going to read
Yeah.
the scriptures as the scriptures of many colors? Right. And then go pick the weird Leviticus verse that you don't know out of context, or you can use out of context to make things sound weird? Or do you understand why that book was written? Do you understand the way the scriptures are working? Do you understand the purpose of the Old Testament as being a testament, a preparation? And can you see how, to the people that it was written for, and it is written for us as well, but especially in that time, that it was to help them prepare for something bigger and greater? And if you do that cafeteria type engagement with it, you can miss that the Messiah is coming.
Yeah.
And
it's not going to put you through the refining process. Part of the work of studying the scriptures is to find things that chip off part of me. And if you're only picking the things that reinforce your edges, then you're not getting refined. You're not getting changed.
Right. Saruman was a flatterer to Theodin. But before Gandalf removed that poison. Remember, they saw Gandalf as just the bearer of bad news, the one who was chipping away at them at all these problems.
Yeah. Oh, there's a good line from Theoden. I can't remember what it was with this exact idea. But we've got a quote.
Oh, we didn't even play the quote.
We didn't play the quote.
Shoot. We can end on this because I'm not sure if this idea connects to everything else, but it is just a cool concept, especially to have of yourself and of goodness, I think. But it comes from chapter 5. This is when Gandalf returns to them. And Gimli's afraid of Fangorn Forest. And that Fangorn is the name of Treebeard. That's who it is. And apparently Gandalf's friends with this guy. And Gimli doesn't understand because everything that he's learned about Fangorn is that the forest is dangerous.
I thought Fangorn was dangerous. Dangerous, cried Gandalf. And so am I. Very dangerous. More dangerous than anything you will ever meet, unless you are brought alive before the seat of the Dark Lord. And Aragorn is dangerous, and Legolas is dangerous. You are beset with dangers, Gimli, son of Glóin, for you are dangerous yourself in your own fashion.
As far as reframes go, seeing dangerous as not just this bad thing. And I think the applications, especially for parents and raising children and becoming dangerous and what that means. Jordan Peterson says something about like people who are chaste because, it's not like they have a lot of prospects. Virtue requires the temptation, just as courage requires the fear. If you're going to practice a virtue, if you're going to be safe, for that to have any virtuous meaning, you need to be dangerous, powerful, to be humble. You need to be deserving of pride. And I think to see, these protagonists, the Gimli, Legolas, Aragorn, their virtue, maybe not totally caused by, but is really tied up with the fact that they are formidable. Being willing to be dangerous and being responsible with it. Because I can be careful if I'm weak. I can be peaceful if I don't have any rage in me. But if I have this power in me, then it's not about being careful per se. It's about being responsible. Use it in the right way, with the attitude of somebody who has a kingdom to rule over, like Aragorn, somebody who has a duty, a responsibility to not only toil, but to rescue.
Yeah. All right. Thank you for being in our book club. If you like the show, please leave a 5-star review. If you don't leave us a review. Just kidding. Send us some hate mail. And if you'd like to contact us with questions, comments, criticisms, or corrections, you can send us an email or voice memo at bookclub@mountaineer.media, MTNAIR.
In our next episode, we will cover Book 4 of The Lord of the Rings, which is the second half of The Two Towers. We promise we'll come back to C.S. Lewis. But in the meantime, check out our back catalog of episodes where we talk about your favorite C.S. Lewis fiction.
See you later.
See ya.
The C.S. Lewis Book Club is sponsored by the Bowsacre Academy Self-Governance Initiative.
Because no one learns better than kids.